Also, the Victorian Police have flagged that they'll be having a look at things like, are you paying attention? Now, suddenly attention has, I think, a totally different test if you're able to observe people for a recorded 8 seconds at a time at a distance of 1 kilometre. We'll take some of your calls on that in just a moment, but I thought first it might be interesting to speak with Richard Yates, who's a senior associate at Tyndall Gask Bentley and their traffic law expert. Richard, good afternoon to you.
Hi, how are you, Will?
I'm well. There are some obvious things here, I think, that are beyond discussion and argument. I mean, we're all well aware now what our legal obligation is with regard to not touching a phone or wearing a seatbelt at all times within the car. But Can you just talk to us about that area that I think is suddenly more grey in light of this technology, the idea of attentive driving?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been in the law for a while. You've got to drive with attention and care for the road. The law at the moment doesn't really specify what you can and can't do, but it's left up to the courts to decide. So things in the past that have been caught for careless driving are things like eating behind the wheel, drinking, even sometimes smoking, using radio equipment, things like that. So it's basically keeping your eyes on the road is the way to go, and if you're not, you could be in trouble.
What's the test then, Richard, in a court? What do they? I mean, what differentiates eating a burger to having a smoke to telling off your kids?
Yeah, the courts basically say it's the reasonable driver or the reasonable prudent driver.
Yep.
So the court basically looks at what someone's alleged to have done and then measures up against, well, what does a reasonable driver in the same circumstance do?
Now, in your experience, do many of these sort of go ahead, these sorts of traffic offences?
Yeah. They certainly do get laid by police.
What's a typical one?
I've had a couple where it's been the eating behind the wheel thing.
Yeah.
And they're always pretty interesting because it depends on what you're eating, actually, to tell you the truth.
Is that right? So where's the line there? Sort of burrito or burger?
Well, exactly right. I mean, the bigger the meal and the more likely it's on your lap, the more trouble you're going to be in. Where if it's a muesli bar or something like that, you still could find yourself on the wrong side of the law. But if you're eating a big meal, then you're certainly going to find yourself in trouble on that one.
Yeah, that's interesting. So given the advent of this sort of technology, and 8 seconds is a pretty good sample period, my thought is this, that where once you're probably only getting prosecuted, you're right. If you try to eat a roast dinner, you're in trouble. Yeah. Likewise, if you're steering the car with your knees because you're doing your tie before work, you're in trouble. But this is a bit different. Suddenly you can have footage of someone for 8 seconds people could be, peering out, reading something on the side of the road and not taking attention. Or maybe they've driven a fair distance over that 8 second period, and as such, they've been actually inattentive, technically, over a period of almost a kilometre, maybe. Do you think, in your mind, this changes the test or the threshold for attentive driving?
Oh, I don't think so. I think it's just a new tool for the courts to have a look at, because historically it's been evidence from people to say, well, I saw someone driving and this is what they were doing. But this will, I guess, be an objective piece of footage to show the court, say, well, this is what happened during the 8 seconds, and then it's up to the court to decide, well, would a reasonable driver have done that or not?
I've got a query here through from Jane on the text line, Richard, and she asks, what about smoking a cigarette while driving one-handed? Surely that's hazardous, not just because of the way that which you're driving, but because there could be things like ash that could become an issue. Is smoking and driving ever something that falls into that category of inattention?
Yeah, look, it can. I guess it'll depend on what's on the footage. If someone's shown to be lighting up and basically taking their eyes off the road and concentrating on that, well, then they're probably driving without due care. Whereas if the footage is just them driving and the cigarette happens to be in their hand, well, that's unlikely to be driving without due care. It just depends on what's on the footage, really.
Yeah, I'm interested too, as someone who deals with traffic expiations and these sort of things quite regularly, the concept of having a camera that can view people up close from a kilometre away or thereabouts and record them for a period. Is there anything else as a lawyer that throws up immediately and questions you ask?
Look, not really. I think it probably throws up privacy issues, but that's more of a sort of an issue for society to look at. As far as the law is concerned, I don't really see a big issue with it. It's obviously being trialled in Victoria at the moment, but history shows that once things are trialled and if they're successful, they're rolled out across the country. So I think that we probably will see this down the track in SA.
Yeah, I think it looks that way, and we got a statement through from SAPOL a little bit earlier saying they're going to review what Victoria does and take a closer look at its effectiveness. Richard, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thanks, Will.
Richard Yates, a senior associate, should I say, with Tyndall Gask Bentley, who he specialises in traffic law and all that kind of stuff.